Hello, I'm Chelsea Bako, and I'm excited to share with you tonight my expertise project on building relationships with stakeholders. So, before I begin, just one quick thing. I know superintendents, they obviously need to do so many things to make a school system successful, but one of the biggest things that I thought was important to learn more about was building relationships with stakeholders because relationships are really what is a driving force for everything else. So the first thing I'm going to focus in on is the who. And so that's who does a superintendent need to build relationships with? Then I go over to the why, and that's why is it important to build relationships with stakeholders? And then how? How can a superintendent build relationships? And finally, some takeaways, just some key points that I learned through this expertise project. So, the interview that I conducted was with Dr. Autumn Jeter, and she is a new superintendent with Bessemer City Schools. This is her second year as a superintendent with Bessemer City Schools. She's held positions both as an administrator in a school and principal, as well as at central office and as a curriculum specialist. So, the who. There are obviously many, many stakeholders, some of which include teachers, students, parents, school board members, city council, business leaders, central office personnel. There's many, many people that are involved within a school system and within the community. So, just honing in on teachers and students who are part of those stakeholders. Teachers, they are probably the most integral part of a school. Teachers are so important because they are really what makes the magic happen. They're the ones that are in the trenches. And that's why it's really important for a superintendent to listen to the teachers and to gather their input. I want to make sure that the teachers feel valued and that they feel worthy because when teachers do feel valued and worthy, it will have an increase in the overall morale, which will affect job satisfaction, the climate and culture of the building, and then that in turn will help students. Because when a teacher is happy, there's teacher retention, there's great things going on, they're going to be more willing to go above and beyond for our students, which is the reason and the purpose why we all do what we do. Um, so those are just some things about teachers and making sure that they are involved and that a superintendent is building relationships with them. Um, Also, we want to make sure that students are involved as well and giving their opinions and feedback. And it's really important to do some focus groups and have students and teachers both be a part of those because we want to make sure that we are continually getting feedback and learning and growing. And these are the people that are in the trenches and that are seeing and hearing things on a day to day basis. Parents. So, want to make sure that keep parents in the know and give them the opportunity to learn what's going on and what the purpose of these initiatives and activities are. Um, Dr. Jeter had talked about one of the things, before COVID, there was she would attend different open house and some things like that. But obviously, now with some restrictions, she has changed and she now does Zoom sessions. She does breakfast with Doc with teachers, but she does dinner with Doc with parents and anyone in the community that wants to join in. I did have the opportunity to join in on her breakfast with Doc, and I thought that was a great session. That teachers and employees within the district tuned in and were asking questions after she started off with some key points and some things that were going on. But I think that dinner with Doc and breakfast with Doctor are great opportunities that she has, was able to think outside the box and be able to incorporate feedback and input and hear stakeholders in a way that is very challenging right now with COVID restrictions. And so that was just a great opportunity that she holds for teachers and then again for parents to provide feedback and to hear some things that are going on within the district. So the next set would be school board and city council. And so obviously we need to have a good working relationship and build relationships with the board members and with city council. Definitely board members so that you have their trust, and that they will give you the opportunity to make decisions for the district without being micromanaged. Need to make sure that there's an open line of communication, and find out how the board best likes to communicate. Dr. Jeter talked about seeing if the board likes to text or whether they like phone calls or if they prefer emails and how often that is, how often they want to hear from you. Is it just when it's something that's really big and important, or is it for a variety of things, such as new initiatives and activities going on? So, just learning when and how the board wants to communicate with you, and gathering feedback for them. That's also really important so that they are just abreast and that you never want them to find out something big from someone else. It always wants to come from the superintendent. And then before COVID, Dr. Jeter had mentioned how she attended neighborhood meetings and was always trying to entertain business leaders, whether it's with roundtables or events in the community. It's a little bit different now, but those are some of the things that she felt were very important in order to build those relationships. And then if there's things that businesses do for the school system, she talked about the importance of showcasing those and showing the support of that business, whether it's a post in a newsletter or it could be something such as a social media post, just acknowledging and thanking them for all that they've been doing for the school system. So number two is the why, and so that's the purpose of building relationships, is to drive the school forward. We want to make sure that we're building as many relationships as possible because they really do have a direct impact on the school system, whether that is financially or whether there's other benefits to that are mutual benefits from a business and for the school. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Later on, but it is really important to make sure that building relationships, because that is the foundation of everything else that a school superintendent will need to do. So, how do you make that work? How do you make that happen? The first thing would be trust. And so, in order to build relationships, a superintendent is first going to have to gain the trust of stakeholders. Just like in a personal relationship, the same thing happens in a professional relationship where a superintendent does need to build the trust of the stakeholders. And one of the easiest things that a superintendent can do in order to build trust is just to listen, not always going to follow through with the feedback given, but it is important to at least listen and hear what people have to say. Transparency. People respect a leader that is transparent and willing to take on the ownership of their decisions, and one that's consistent. Appreciate knowing what to expect, especially teachers. They like consistency and appreciate knowing what a superintendent might do or how they might handle a situation, and to know that there's follow through as well, and what a superintendent is saying is actually what is going to happen, and that they can trust that. That again goes right back to the trust, the follow through. Making time. This is probably one of the biggest things throughout research and even hearing other interviews throughout the class. Making time to visit the schools and to gain input and hear from teachers and students, administrators. It was really something that I think hit home because it is very difficult to make that happen a lot of times because of a busy schedule, but it is extremely vital for a superintendent to make time to visit schools and to be really in the trenches and to see and hear everything that's going on. And then definitely model. This is something, we want teachers to do, to model what the behavior that we want their students to have, but it's something that a superintendent needs to also bring to the table, because if we want everyone in our district to be positive, a school superintendent most definitely needs to be positive as well. So, just some quick takeaways from this project. The first one is building relationships takes time and investment. It is not something that's going to happen overnight, and it does take time to build the trust and to build those relationships. And a superintendent needs to be invested. They need to be willing to step outside and to go to these community events and to go to the athletics and the academic events and all these things. And really, it is very time consuming, but it is very worthwhile in the end. A superintendent must sustain the relationships in order to support the school system, especially within the community, because it's something that, in order to continually have the support, you can't just be a one and done kind of thing and not talk to this community or business leader. It needs to be an ongoing relationship that a superintendent is, again, invested in putting time into. And then I mentioned earlier about having a mutually beneficial opportunity. Yes, it is great. And then there's a lot of businesses that are willing to just financially support a school system. But if there's a way for it to be mutually beneficial, that's even better. One of the examples through my research was that a school in Georgia had a high dropout rate of their high school seniors, and this was a business that um, was financially helping the school system, but the superintendent worked with this business, and they were able to hire some of the high school seniors that were at risk, and they paid them after school to work at the factory. And so this was something that was mutually beneficial because the productivity rate of the high school seniors was actually higher than the adults that worked for the company. And so seniors stayed in school. They were able to gain some real life experiences in the workforce. And at the same time, the company was benefiting from it because of the productivity rate. So just being able to get creative and really thinking outside the box is important as a superintendent, building those relationships in a multitude of ways with businesses within the community, and even teaching. So the last thing I have here is to work to have business leaders deeply involved, and by that I mean just having them be knowledgeable and really understanding what's going on in a school system, because that's not always the case. And it's easy just to write a check or to help financially in different ways, but being able to allow our business leaders to come in and to really see what's going on in a school and why it's important, and again, follow through so they can see what their investment truly is doing for a school system. So again, relationships are key to making all of this happen, and relationships take time. They take investment from the superintendent, and it is something that is vital in order to totally benefit a school system.